Well, dreams, they feel real while we're in them, right? It's only when we wake up that we realize something was actually strange. Let me ask you a question. You never really remember the beginning of a dream, do you? You always wind up right in the middle of what's going on.
I guess, yeah.
So how did we end up here?
Well, we just came from the,
Think about it, Ariadne. How did you get here? Where are you right now?
We're dreaming?
You're actually in the middle of the workshop right now, sleeping. This is your first lesson in shared dreaming. Stay calm.
Welcome to the Real Flat Earth Friday. How are you doing this evening, brother?
I'm great. I'm looking forward to the podcast. It was a great week. I hope everybody tuning in had a great week. I mean, as great it could possibly be in this crazy realm that we find ourselves in, right?
Oh man, some of the headlines that I read, it just blows my mind that this is supposedly the world that we live in. These things taking place, it just seems so absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need an end to the crazy stories that we get. Tonight, what are we going to be doing, brother?
So looks like, as much as I don't want to always have to say again, what we had seen and followed the patterns of was that a group of people were trying to tie the flat earth topic to the Bible with an impossible fake model so that they could debunk both flat earth and the Bible.
Absolutely. So there's been a common thread that we've seen along the way. So it started out about 8 years ago when both Ron and I figured out that the AE map model, the Freemason New World Order pressurized pizza dome, single pole that is, we found out that it was impossible, and we started sharing it with people like Jaron, and you've got it documented, and Jaron's admitted it, and the whole bad blood that there's been between us and the pressurized pizza domers is that we were calling out the errors that they're now accepting 8 years ago, and with plenty more evidences than just the 24-hour sun. So we've got a commonality that we noticed with these characters. We've gotten to know them. You know, we hear their positions time and time again with what they say on YouTube over the years, and this commonality that we've seen is that they are anti-Christian, like specifically anti-Christian. They see this as an important position that they hold, and they bind together, they support each other, and then they do this false dichotomy psyop where they only talk about the globe or the pressurized pizza dome, and they continue to ignore the stereographic virtual reality model, and yet they still do acknowledge it at times. And so we're going to be going through this podcast where Higherside Chats, this is somebody that is somebody that we've not talked about too much, really a fence sitter on the shape of the earth position, except that, I mean, one of the first things that I heard was Eric Dubé's interview with Higherside Chats back in the day. You know, I thought he was a good guy for flat earth, but now we see the position that he takes. He's the fence sitter. He tries to play it both ways, but he's truly with the globe side.
Yeah, so Greg, the Higherside Chats gentleman character, bursts onto the scene. He was came out of the whole tinfoil hat comedy club group Owen Benjamin is also a part of. Looks like, there's more information, more research to be done, but ties to San Diego, now in Florida, SoCal, Southern guy. He was the one who brought Eric Dubé on and, was able to speak well. He's what you would call the conspiracy theory Joe Rogan. He's a podcast influencer. He came out and he did the interview with Jaron and with Eric and a few other characters back in the early stages of the Flat Earth rollout. And there's a lot of things that you'll like about Greg. And then for me, there's a lot of things that I don't like. And with everybody, we're not all going to appreciate or agree with everything that everyone says. But when you can actually find agendas and narratives that are being woven into the content, this is the reason why Jason is stating that we've had a lot of problems with characters in the Flat Earth community for this entire time. Because when we explained to characters like Jeranism that the impossibilities of their model, and they continued to push those theories, we knew that there was an agenda. And what you're going to see tonight, and I would like you to form your own opinions, is that Greg constantly puts the agenda that Jaron's putting forth on a tee for him and allows him to awkwardly come up and swing and hit the ball. And a lot of the times Jaron muffs it, slices it, misses the ball completely. Whether or not that's intentionally, I'm going to leave that up to you to decide. So what we see here was Jon Le Bon, the character who started the Ball Earth Skeptics, a character that I know for over a decade now. Came out of, he was a political conspiracy pundit in Australia. His name's Todd. Comes across as a very nice guy, just like Greg. They're fence sitters. They don't take positions on either side. They keep the door as wide open to possibilities as they can. They both, Todd is his name, and Greg have pay websites where they'll give you the first hour of their show most of the times for free, but you have to sign up, and it's not that much money, right? And Jason, I'll have you jump in at any point, and I just want to say that because I decided to not create content for money, that this was a passion project for me, I don't want other people to think that I'm looking down on them. I know some people who pay for content. Those people that pay the $6, the $12 a month, whatever it might be, they feel like they've been given a higher level of content. They enjoy to pay. Some people want to support the content creators, and I don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with that. Jason, I'll let you speak on a few topics or on this topic if you want, and then I'll add a little bit more here.
Well, the danger in getting paid is extreme, because once you start taking money for the things that you're saying, out publicly, there's people that want to pay to make you influence in a certain way. And so if you're monetized, you have like YouTube that's controlling what it is that you can talk about, what you can say. If you've got Patreons, now you have to cater to each one of those person that if they're paying you and all of a sudden they say, well, we don't really want you to talk about that, and we want you to hold this position. If they're paying you, what are you going to do? Are you going to, say things that aren't true, defend products that aren't good just because you're getting paid? Yeah, so the danger in selling your soul, selling out your soul, is very, very real as soon as you start accepting money. So it's the reason why I wanted nothing to do with it. It seems like an extremely dangerous game.
Yeah, the two paths that there are there is A, you do generate some income, right, from people who just enjoy your content, right? But B, the worst case scenario of the two paths is that the only thing that people pay for is dismiss and malinformation. That's the only thing that anyone ever wants to use an influencer to do, is to promote dismiss and malinformation. And what you find with these characters, we'll go back to Todd, Jon Le Bon. He started the Baller Skeptic show, and he had all of the prominent flat earthers on. that had followings. And Jon played the fence, and he was friendly and open to the idea that the Earth wasn't a spinning sphere flying through infinite outer space. And he interviewed these characters, and Jon was very easily able to debunk the pressurized pizza dome model, the one that Jason and I have been vehemently fighting against since long before any of your globe earthers started to do the same thing. Jason and I were the ones who were excommunicated for doing this. So what you have now is Jon Le Bon does a video saying, oh, everybody, you've got to check this out. This might be the greatest podcast in a very long time about the shape of your world, your worldview that shapes your reality. He's given a shout out to Greg. And so when you go over to the Higherside Chats, obviously the symbolism there is, you're going to see the symbolism is just, it is what it is, right? There's no denying it, or I don't really even have to point out what you're going to see, right? You're going to see upside down stars. You're going to see upside down crosses. You're going to see all kinds of pyramids and aliens who are depicted as demonic. You're going to see all kinds of stuff. Okay. There is the update. It's Jeran is now. So Jeran was a fake flat earther LARPing, promoting the false pressurized pizza dome, which Jason and I have been exposing for almost a decade. Literally, we both had calls with Jeran and explained to him that the map and model that he's pushing is incorrect due to the fact that the sun rises due east and sets due west. That's a straight path, right? The AE map, the sun would always be circling. There's no straight path on a circular model, and it's only a single pole. So you've got Jeran who's now flipped, and all Jeran has now, he's a one-hit wonder, and his entire worldview now is that Earth could never, will never, and is not flat. Considering he spent 10 years saying the Earth is not a ball, he's completely 180'd it, and he has a complete scripted agenda. If I can see the pattern, I'm pretty sure that everybody else out there can as well. But what you have is different groups of people who are then adding their own thoughts and theories into why is Jeran flipped and what is he doing. And basically, if you read between the lines and pay attention, you'll find that Jon Le Bon is an anti-Christian character promoting the Higherside Chats, who is also an anti-Christian character, and Jeran, who is the open, loudest anti-Christian character. And what they're doing is they're supporting the narrative that the AE Mappa model is nothing but a lie, and that it's founded and based on the Bible, which is also now been discredited and a lie. And they're actually going to profit off these things because so many people in this world don't want to be judged. They don't want to have to deal with any of their flaws or their things that they have caused and harmed other people. Now, there are a lot of people that do want to, settle the score and create less debt. And so what we have here are three characters that are all anti-Christian, right? And you can see them working together for an agenda. And that ultimately is to destroy the worldview that the Earth could possibly be anything other than a big bang, infinite blackness, tiny blue dots flying through outer space cosmology. And it's obvious.
Yeah, Jeran, the one trick pony. So we're going to be going through this interview where the Higherside Chats is talking about Jeran with, what do you do now? If you were a one trick pony that only did this pressurized pizza dome stuff, and now you don't believe it, what do you do now? Well, the word that comes out of his mouth is anti-Christian content. So that is the genre of content that Jeran intends to focus his ministry, right?
Well,
because
that's how
he's a preacher. He's trying to create a cult. Jeranism is because he's trying to get a cult-like following, and his cult is an anti-Christian cult.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he is actually, for hire, his narrative is that he's anti-Christian. He's always been that. That is his main source of income, and those are the people that hire him. But his agenda is to fight against the Bible and the fact that the Earth is flat and stationary. And the whole Jeranism cult thing, basically what you find rooted in all Satanism, is basically worship of self. And you're going to find that with Jon Le Bon, Todd, who's on the screen now, or going to be on the screen soon. And you're going to find that with Greg from the Higherside Chats. And obviously the name Jeranism, he is deifying his name. When you add the ism, you're basically calling yourself a religion, right? Like Hinduism, Buddhism, right? And because you can't use that word with Christianity because it actually just means Christ-like. It doesn't mean any religion. We are against all religion. So John, I tagged him. I also commented on his video and asked him if he wanted to share any thoughts on this, because I was going to show the fact that he's tied up in this anti-Christian agenda. And he basically, mocked me and mocked the idea. And here's how John responded. Jason, do you want to read it? Do you want me? What do you want to say here?
Yeah. So, I mean, you, like you said, you tagged him. And so this is John speaking about the content that we're doing right now. This is May 2nd, 12:27 p.m. Laugh out loud. I'll give you credit for the artwork. That's amusing, but I don't see what you hope to achieve by dedicating an entire show to attacking those who disagree with you about your flat earth faith. And Greg was very sympathetic to flat earth in the Jaron episode. Did you even listen, man? So he's trying to paint Greg as sympathetic to flat earth, but we're going to be pointing out that he's a controlled op fence sitter that gave airtime to Eric DeBay, and now he's given airtime to Jaron. I guess this is the second time. He's done it once as Jaron was a fake flat earther, and now that he's a globe shill flipper, he's getting the attention again. So the attacking is we come from a completely third party position where we're neither globers, we're neither pressurized pizza domers, but we're stereographic biblical virtual reality people. So we just come in with that third perspective on all the content that we cover, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And here, let's dissect Jon Le Bon's. So if you study Jon Le Bon or John Gustafson, you'll find the psychology of dealing with crowds and all these other types of mind control tactics. So what John's doing here, he's assuming, right, that we're going to attack anyone. We're not attacking anyone. We're showing the information that you three, Todd, Jon Le Bon, Jaron, and Greg, are putting forth into the world. We're just documenting it. We're not attacking anyone. So by his language, he's assuming and already painting the narrative with the words that he's not saying, that Jason and I are physically and spiritually attacking him, Todd here, John, Greg, and Jaron. And then he goes on to, we're attacking them, he wants to say, because they don't agree with our flat earth faith. So now he's bringing a belief or a desire of us to want something when we don't actually have evidence. Faith is believing in things that you do not have physical, tangible evidence for. So he's influencing the viewer with his word salad sandwich, trying to paint a narrative that Jason and I, we have, if you want to believe that you live on a spinning sphere flying through infinite outer space and that you were created from a big bang and through evolution and a monkey turned into you, you can go ahead and believe that. But when you're actively out misinforming people, disinforming people, and working together to further an agenda to discredit the truth, we are going to document it, John. Todd. His name's Todd. I don't know why he doesn't like the name. There's nothing wrong with the name Todd. And,
so the complete irony of it too, by saying that we're the ones that are, in some sort of religion type thing. So the thing that they're defending is this whole space ball idea. And so it was the Vatican in the 1600s that came up with geocentrism from Pythagoreanism, right? So you've got the pagan Pythagoreans that were these occult, it's ancient Babylonian, it's ancient Canaanite, religion. And then you have the Pythagoreans, then you have the Vatican in the 1600s come up with the geocentric space ball. And then it wasn't until the mid 1800s that they came up with the heliocentric, flying through infinite space vacuum lie. And then it wasn't until 1930 that they came up with everything came from nothing in a Big Bang, or was it 27? It was in that range right there. And so that all came from the Vatican. I mean, the original roots came from the Pythagoreanism, but it's the Vatican. If you're a space baller, you are a Vatican disciple, right? You're a part of the Vatican cult.
Exactly. And so it continues on, right? And now Greg is this altruistic, caring, sympathetic person who only wants the truth, just like Jaron and just like Jon, right? Todd. Okay. And he's insinuating that we didn't even watch the content. We're just coming to attack people when they're the ones on attack. We're just documenting what they're doing. So, like I said, so let's get into the next link. So here was the post on the Twitter or X of the Higherside Chats, this Greg character. What's his name? Greg Cadwell. We'll get into that later. So here's his first tweet. Flat Earth apostate, they're calling him. Right? And remember, this is the narrative that Todd is promoting here. Jon Le Bon recently appeared on the Higherside Chats. It says, it was a terrific episode. Among the most important published in this corner of the internet in a long time, says Todd. I spent a couple of days reviewing and clipping some of the best bits. And then what you see there, everyone, is a link to Patreon. So Jon is, before he's done his YouTube video, just after that podcast aired, he's already monetized it. Think about this. Jon Le Bon, this is Todd, this is how he makes money. He does it through commentating on content. And he used to make good content where he exposed things like the dino hoax and nuke hoax and stuff like that, but he doesn't do that anymore. He just commentates now, right? And does exactly, he is a influencer like Greg from the Higherside Chat. So here he is. This is the first that we've seen from Jon, that post to his Patreon. So we carry on now. And then, well, I think, are we going to go through? Okay. Do you want to start with this? Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Jon's setup to this whole thing that happened with the Higherside Chats and Jaron. So
a long time, but some of you guys might not realize that before there was a jonlebon.com, I was just a YouTuber and a streamer for about 2 years actually, before I ever launched jonlebon.com. And there was this series that I did that somehow seemed to put my channel on the map, and it was called the Baller Skeptic Roundtable. This was back in 2015, so we are talking a decade ago. Do you remember what you were doing 10 years ago? Do you remember what you were doing back in, say, the middle of 2015? I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, but I would blame me if I didn't, because it was very important what I was doing. It was called the Baller Skeptic Roundtable. And this was a weekly show. Every week, myself and the two other co-hosts of the show, we would have a new guest on the show, and most weeks the new guest was a flat earther. And the guests included people like Eric Dubay, Mark Sargent, Jaron from Jeranism. There was a guy called the Morgile who was really big at that time. Stars Are Souls, Wakey. You go through the list and all the big names of Flat Earth were on the show. Somebody who wasn't necessarily a big name at the time, but is now possibly the biggest name in Flat Earth, was a guy called David Weiss. He was one of the regulars on the show. He was one of the co-hosts. It was myself, David Weiss, and this other fellow called Matrix Decode. And so every week the three of us would chat with a new guest who, like I said, was usually a flat earther. Although for episode 11, we got some spinning ball earthers on the show to discuss their beliefs about how we live on this giant spinning ball going through outer space. It was a very interesting story. I mean, these guys believe some wild things, these heliocentrists. But anyway, the point is we did that show for 12 weeks. And then at the end of that series, it was like, okay, I think we've figured it out now. It's time to move on. Of course, subsequently, David Weiss went on to become one of the big names in Flat Earth. Flat Earth Dave, he's known. He's now on the Alex Jones show. He's doing shows with Eddie Bravo. He's a big deal in Flat Earth, this David Weiss guy. Now, we had no way of knowing, or at least I had no way of knowing at that time, that all these years later, Jeran, who was on the show, I think 3 times we had him on the show. He was on once as the special guest, once as a drop-in kind of special guest, and he was on the reunion show at the end. So he was kind of a regular too. Anyway, I couldn't have known at that time that if we were to fast forward about 9 years, that Flat Earth Dave and Jeran would have a falling out over Antarctica. You see, Jeran was offered a free ticket to go to Antarctica to see if it is as the Ball model predicts, or if it is as the Flat Earthers would suggest. I only found out recently when listening to one of the recent Higherside Chats episodes that Flat Earth Dave told Jeran, don't go on that trip. The guy who's organizing the trip, he's a fake pastor. He's not really running a church, which is that guy's story, Will Duffy. That's not a true story. He's fake. He's a Satanist. And if you go on this trip to Antarctica, they might try to kill you. I didn't know any of that.
So at this point here, okay, Todd or John, he knows all this information. He's acting surprised and that this is the first time that he's heard this, but he keeps tabs on pretty much everything that takes place. He was in the conspiracy community long before Flat Earth. And he knew that David Weiss was also a prominent conspiracy theorist. David Weiss profited off the big 3, right? That's what he did. And he threw all those out and became just Flat Earth Dave, or deep inside the rabbit hole, which he's had to change with all the symbolism and stuff that was exposed. His hypnotic, whatever you want to call it. It was just pathetic, all the stuff that he had. So if we are to search, we've got Will Duffy being brought up. Jason, I guess we can do this live if you want. But Will Duffy is the protege of a character named Bob Enyart. Bob Enyart ran a church in Denver and hired Will Duffy. Jason had an extensive interview with Will Duffy and tried to get as many questions asked as possible. Will obviously didn't like or enjoy the documentation of his story at all. So Bob Enyart was a character who became mostly famous because he bought a bunch of O.J. Simpson paraphernalia and then burned it at the courthouse while O.J. was being tried for the hoax that he was involved in. Bob Enyart was an openly against Flat Earth person. If we put in Bob Enyart Flat Earth in the search bar, let's see if we can get him trying to debunk Flat Earth. So he had a radio show. He has some crazy theories that he pushes, that the Bible and the prophecies, they're not going to be fulfilled, and that the creator is open to do whatever he wants, and his sons push these things, and they have debates with evolutionists, pushing evolutionary things like dinosaurs are real, and they existed less than a few hundred years ago, they say, while saying that they don't believe in evolution, while proving and trying to put forth that evidence. So Bob Enyart, I think maybe the Reddit link might have it. So he died, sadly, apparently. My heart goes out to anybody who loses anybody in this world. He was against and died from it. But while he was alive, he was an active person that was against Flat Earth. Mm-hmm. So it was Will Duffy, who was his protege, who then became the pastor of Bob's church, not his kids. It was Will that got selected. Will was supposedly Bob's apprentice, right? Junior. And so in comes Will Duffy. And so Bob Enyart also was involved in many of these other top Tavistock CIA type topics. Like Bob would go to schools and talk about how there should be more contraceptives there because teenage kids are getting pregnant too much, and then the pregnancies in the school would skyrocket. He was involved in shootings at abortion clinics and many crazy things. People had claimed that he was involved in JonBenet Ramsey. The list with Bob Enyart is very, very deep. You could spend years going through all the weird instances that this character was involved in. So most importantly, Jeran Jaron Campanella was a huge Bob Enyart fan, and me and Jason found that very odd because,
especially for a person that's vehemently anti-Christian.
yes, vehemently. So if you hit Bob Enyart, Flat Earth, do you have any images of him? There are. I guess it's not coming up, but like I just wanted to paint the picture. Jaron has actively come out and spoke about Bob Enyart with Will Duffy on his channel and how much he really loved, respected, listened to his show. So it's odd for us to hear Jaron supporting anybody that's quote unquote Christian. So
his reputation is just for being an anti-jabber.
Yeah, and then passing away due to the fact that he was an anti-jabber. But what I'm saying was he was on many, many topics that he was, I don't even activated on, working on, very involved in.
Radio show. And then the producer of that show all of a sudden becomes Will Duffy. And then when Enyart passes, then all of a sudden the congregation comes and says, we want you to be our minister. And
he gave the eulogy.
Yeah. Does it for free, right? He's just this rich guy that has the SEC after him for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
No, millions,
right? Millions, yeah.
So in comes Will, and he doesn't let everybody know that Bob Enyart was an activist against Flat Earth, right? He doesn't say that. He never divulges that. And anytime Bob Enyart was brought up, the majority of the times you'll find Will Duffy was, he felt attacked. He wasn't able to answer questions. He didn't want to have anything to do with any of the ideas that he was connected to it. Jason asked him many things and he lied about every single thing. So all of a sudden, Will Duffy gets the agenda of he's the selected, and they needed a Christian pastor to debunk flat Earth, because the majority of people that believe that the Earth is flat go to the book of Genesis, where it states that the Earth is fixed and immovable. And they support it with other books of the extra canonical, of like the book of Enoch, the book of Jasher, different quotes where Joshua actually told the sun and the moon to stand still and not the earth to hold forth on its spinning path through the endless darkness of space. So Will Duffy stepped in. And of course, lo and behold, Jeranism, who was the guy that was promoting since 10 years ago that you can't go to Antarctica, and that they're clipping the footage from Antarctica of the sunrise and sunset, where we would have evidence that the sun stayed above the horizon, which would debunk the AE map and model. But we already explained to the viewer that are tuning in here on the other side of the screen that Jason and I debunked it to Jaron long before he even started the whole Antarctic clipped footage. So he was activated. Jaron was also working with Will and Bob. The entire time, the evidence shows that he was pushing. David Weiss also was pushing.
John Todd.
and Todd, Jon Le Bon, was also pushing, dismiss, and malicious information to support the false narrative. Now, Todd was the first one to flip. He became a globe earther very, very early on, right after the Ball Earth Skeptic show. And he used evidence like the direction of the star trails in the southern hemisphere. Very easy stuff to see that, hey, this doesn't work on a single pole pressurized pizza dome. He grew up in Australia, in the southern hemisphere, right, where you can see the stars circling the wrong direction. It's that easy to debunk the pressurized pizza dome. But you got the two characters, Jaron and Dave. Dave is still vehemently fighting for the pressurized pizza dome, for the single pole model that doesn't work in reality. But Jaron was always the one who was going to flip. And we could speculate whether he was working on a cash cow, trying to build up his credibility. He, again, is an anti-Christian character who is verified. So he works for YouTube. He's nuked his channel, but he still has the support of all the Satanists, all the anti-Christians. They all go to Jaron. And you know that everyone who believes in the spinning sphere Earth model and evolution, not everyone, but the majority of these people, they don't believe in the Bible. They think it's a fairy tale. So Jaron flips, and he has the entire script, right? The entire script. And John's coming out, and because nobody watches the Higherside Chats except for their communities. We're going to get into those pictures of him after. Jon had to do the promo to point people, right? Also, he's profiting off of it, to the agenda that Jon Le Bon has been involved with, that the Earth is a spinning sphere flying through outer space. And he's pushing people to the Higherside Chats channel and Jaron. And on this hangout, when we get to it, you're going to hear the complete agenda from start to finish. Jaron doesn't miss much. And while they're going through that, you know, Jason, I'm going to end my ranting here. We're going to let the content roll for itself so far after this tonight. But you can clearly hear that the podcast was edited, clipped. None of the stuff that these characters do is live. None of them. Jon Le Bon, Jeranism, and Greg from the Higherside Chats. Everything they do is edited together and clipped and made in a way where they can hide their mistakes. And you can clearly hear them chilling and disinforming people away from having a third perspective on reality. What the agenda has been to create a false dialectic, a false dichotomy, only this or that scenario. The Earth is only a pressurized pizza dome, flat Earth, United Nations map, or the Earth is a spinning sphere flying through outer space. And what they don't want you to realize is the third option, is that it's a supernatural virtual reality, and that the evidence is actually easily found within the Bible, right? And you can hear Greg put it on a T for Jaron, time in and time out. All of the narrative was scripted. They're reading it off their screens, and it's simple to see for me and you, Jay.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's literally right on the screen right now. So you've got Jaron the Spaceballer right here. You've got David Weiss, the single pole pressurized pizza domer. And then you've got the Matrix background here. So there's all three models being represented. Why have the Matrix background here, Todd Le Bon? If you're gonna like try to mock us and deny that there is a virtual reality option, the Matrix is like a reference to Earth being a virtual reality, the Matrix, right? So it's all three of them are right here, but he's only going to talk about the fake fight between these two right here. Do you want to play more of this, or should we take a break and then come back? And go ahead.
Well, we got to get through a few more of these character links. So again, we don't have to play any more of this. It's just Jon Le Bon, Todd Le Bon again, setting up the false dialectic. And you can see how Jon tries to be sympathetic. He tries to play both sides of the fence. So when you're grifting, when you are being supported through content, you can't close the door on any of these narratives. And Christianity is one that they will close the door on, which is crazy to me. The fact that they'll do that, these guys. But they'll all say, you know, it could be a ball, it could be a virtual reality. Well, they won't say, they'll say stuff like sandbox or simulation or Pac-Man. And they're only going to mock and ridicule the idea. And again, Jason, what we really want people to understand is that your worldview is very foundational in who you are, and understanding that you're not being taught that the whole idea of physical materiality is something that goes beyond anything that we're being shown or taught in the schools. It really opens the door to possibilities. So if we can click on some of the links, let's get into the character of Greg. Before we go to our song break, I wanted us to go through the different images, some of the content that you can find about him. So he regularly goes throughout, it looks like mostly the southern United States of America. He throughout San Diego, Arizona. He wears an Austin, Texas shirt in one of these shots. He is an influencer that people pay to have him come to their meetups, right? And as far as I can tell, none of these people are, they're again, non-Christian people. They're conspiracy theorists. It's like a larger version of the flat earth community, but without the flat earth. Now, here he is. He was boastful, smoking a upside down cross And funny enough, he's wearing an Austin, Texas shirt, Bat City, because this is the city in America. There's a bridge where they've got just a super amount of bats. And that's where they probably got the idea for Batman, right, Jay?
Yeah. So the Higherside Chats, he plays the same type of character where it's all about getting high and talking about this kind of stuff. We know that Jeranism, he did the Reefer Madness, and he's always the high guy talking like his crazy conspiracies. So what did Elon Musk goes on Joe Rogan, they get high and then they talk about crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. So one of the way that they discredit these characters is they make them these high guys, potheads that are out there talking conspiracies. That's part of the Tavistock mind control aspect.
Well said. And not only that, but it lulls a person into a sense of trustability, because everybody smokes some pot, right? It's the least of the things that you can terribly do to your avatar suit, right? You get a little high. Nobody smokes a little pot and starts fist fighting and robbing. It's generally a laid back thing. But here he is. He's repping the Bat City, which, it's too bad he's repping Austin. Again, Greg is a likable character. Todd is a likable character. Jaren, he's not too much of a likable character. Here he is again. He gets brought into all these beer festivals, and you see the same symbolism throughout all this. I don't know if they're Freemasons or Freemans. I don't know I don't want to speculate exactly what they're into, but continue on with the pictures. Here he is with Sam Tripoli. So this is the comedy club out in LA that Owen Benjamin came out of. They were prominent comedians. He's doing the Code of Silence hand sign. If you're a conspiracy theorist truther, you generally don't go around doing conspiracy symbolism, but they do it. And they do it a lot. Sam's got the Tinfoil Hat podcast. He's another one of these anti-Christian influencers. Again, same type of deal as they're basically conspiracy theorist Joe Rogan's wannabes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here he is at another one of these large meetups with the same type of characters. I see a common thread too with the meetups. A lot of these guys, like Todd, they've got the long beard, Jon Le Bon. They wear the toques, they wear the hats. So I see it's weird because I see similarities to Kabbalism, but they don't look like Kabbalists. They don't look like Freemasons. I don't know what we're looking at, but he's very popular. He gets flown all over the country to these different meetups and these different things. Oh, is that guy doing a flat earth sign? Nah, he's doing the devil horns. Yeah, we don't really know, but if you want to further research Greg, what's his name? Greg Cadwell or the Higherside Chats guy, go right ahead. He plays the fence. He is not too far one way or the other. He's going to try to defend flat earth, is also mocking and insulted at the same time. What's this next one that we got? Yeah, here's the first update that we got. So when he got the agenda across his desk, I don't know if this guy has an agent or if he just does the bookings. But he's in a group or a community like Joe Rogan, where you have to get on these influencer podcasts and you sell your content. You sell products, you sell beer, they sell everything, right? And so here's the first him addressing the final experiment.
Expedition that some prominent flat earth proponents took. They went down to Antarctica and they were at an outpost. Austin Whitsitt was there, and Jeranism. They saw the 24-hour sun. They were at this space station. Sun went around them for 24 hours, never went dark. That's not supposed to happen in flat earth cosmology because the ice ring is on the outer edge of the bullseye, the dinner plate. So it's a curiosity. It's thrown a bit of a wrench in the flat earth community. Obviously, conspiracy people are going to be a skeptical bunch, so they say, well, you throw a couple $1 million at some prominent flat earth people, they'll lie if it changes their whole multi-generational wealth. I don't believe that. I think these guys are pretty legit. They're really after the truth.
Offer them a couple $1 million. No, They're legit truthers.
They're really after the truth, right? Even though Jason and I both have evidence, I've got it documented on the Beyond Flat Earth channel in 2016, September 11th. I literally showed Jaron the sun was rising south and setting south of east, rising south of east and setting south of west in the southern hemisphere. I showed him that the sun's path is completely the opposite of what would be demanded for the A map model. And went on for the next 8 years to disinform and lie. And he just said, oh, coffee cup caustic. He made up excuses. He's now taken the evidence that we've used to debunk the AE map. He now says that it debunks flat earth. So you've got the same. So Greg here, if we just scroll through this clip.
I just got to say, Jaron the Jesuit, who also starred in Behind the Curve. Right?
That's right. Well, yeah. I don't know if we'll go through it, but Anarchapulco, Jeff Berwick does a thing where he had David Weiss there speaking, and they had a debate. And in the debate, Jaron was referenced twice as the flat earther that also proved curvature and then also proved the 21st century. But don't go off this. I just wanted you to scroll through that video a little bit more. I just wanted to show people how Greg is doing subtle predictive mind control programming on people. Not that clip, but yeah, you can see he's got some Satanism going on in there. But if we go back a little bit, yeah, his logo is a compass in a square with tentacles, which is the Hydra, which is the symbolism, the New World Order. So they'll show the AE mapping model, the pressurized single pole pizza dome flying through outer space there. So we're explaining to people that they've created a false dialectic, a false dichotomy, two wrong choices. This is one of them. So they'll show this impossible reality and then say that this is the flat earth model when it's not. It's a group of agents like Eric Dubay and Jeranism and David Weiss that were activated to push this model and tie the Bible to it. That was their goal. And you just keep scrolling through so you can see that. And then he goes on in the video to say that he believes they're real truth seekers.
So this is not Antarctica. Right?
No.
This is just AI art. But the Freemasons love all their pyramids and all that kind of stuff.
So again, he ties the flat earth. He literally says the ring, and he shows the AE Mappa model flying through outer space. And if you see any content creators showing the ring and tying that Mappa model to the idea that the earth is a flat plane, you need to understand that they're either A, super deceived, or B, they're part of the agenda. And this is how, so they knew that the earth was not a spinning sphere. Okay. The people that have the technology and capability of doing high altitude flight, the people that have been trying to get the stitching together the earth because they can't actually get a spinning view of the sphere earth that they try to claim that we live on. The only way that they could actually stop people from actually breaking out of this programming was to tell them that, yeah, the earth is flat, but this is the model and the shape of it. And then what they planned on doing was debunking it. That's fundamental truth number 2 in the description box. And this is how we can show the evidence that Greg and Todd and Jaron are all working together to do.
Fundamental truth number 2, the AE map model is impossible, created as part of a false dichotomy PSYOP to connect the Bible to an impossible plain earth model in an attempt to discredit both. That the first 4 fundamental truths we started standing on in June of 2017.
And we were able to pattern recognize that these people were all working together with an agenda after we explained it to them. And they continued to excommunicate us, mock us, to do everything they could to silence us and continue to push the false narratives. We knew that that was the agenda. And lo and behold, here came Will Duffy again from the Bob Enyart protege just to do that. We can go to the next link that you had. That was the tie together that I wanted. So that was the first clip that Greg was reactivated into the flat earth community. Here you can see, again, like Jason said earlier today, if you're trying to gain an income from speaking, the generalized reactions that you get out of people, they only pay for stuff that's satanic, right? You don't like most and false Christianity too. I don't want to throw false Christianity out with the bathwater yet, because that gets heavily over prophetized too. You get the rapture communities, like, so this isn't all just an attack on this stuff, but look at his symbolism. Look at this.
Well, here it is.
Trinity.
It's the Trinity. So the anti-Christian is promoting the Trinity.
That's the all-seeing eye, the pentagram, right? Oh, he lost it. It's gone now. And the alien he had on his Trinity.
You get the pillow or the coffee cup.
But you can see the symbolism. What is that? The light rays, the Jesuitism, that's pure Satanism symbolism. Why does Greg sell this? Who is his audience? Who is he appealing to with this?
Is he taking the piss?
How is it that him and Todd and Jaron are all working together? They're all acting the same, albeit, Jaron he's not as much of the fence sitter. He Hollow Earth.
This is the shirt that he had on, and
one of the shots, the thumbnail. So it's mockery. And as you can see below on the left, you can see they have almost the correct projection on the bottom left there, as you can see.
Yeah,
that's almost correct. It's on the Earth. So we'll get to the understanding is that if Earth was created an AE map and model, everybody would know. If Earth was created a sphere, everyone would know. This reality that we're in was created in a way that it was, it's not, you can't figure it out. It's made in such a way where you have to actually do the work, do the searching, and you have to be honest and come to the conclusion that it's a supernatural realm that you're in, right? We use the word virtual reality. Here's his other logo. What is this? He's got
compass.
So everybody needs to know the compass and square, the let's smoke a little and get high. And then, so that alien right there was actually manifested by Aleister Crowley, right? If I could be corrected if I'm wrong,
I think he's got...
Was it Lem?
The aliens right there. So he's got the pyramid with the all-seeing eye, then the Lem alien here. This is an octopus that has its mouth looks like a one eye.
Yeah.
In the compass and square. So, I mean, he's put a lot of time and effort into making this really as Freemasonic, satanic that he can.
Why?
Right?
Well, I don't understand. Well, I guess because it sells, right? Because that's what sells.
Anti-Christian.
Yeah. Well, and we're trying to show to people, these are the things that we see. The patterns are obvious. Why is it that this guy is super popular and he's pro flat earth and he's pro globe earth and he's pro virtual reality, right?
His new world order. I mean,
look at this.
Why would you sell this?
Why? $27. What, like, so
he's a truther, and this is,
look at does it get more Freemasonic Kabbalistic than that? This guy's a truther. It's pure satanic. Oh, it's about balancing the feminine and the masculine, and they come up with this. No, it's not. It's about controlling people and taking from this realm what you want.
The spaceship.
Again, outer space, aliens, all that stuff is satanic, demonic, mind control. He's got the Tesla tower on there.
Here you got the Jesuit sun rays.
Yeah, the 1,000 points of light, which is the Jesuit symbolism from the Vatican. But
here's a great message. Homeless guy, quit your job. Right.
And they got that toque on, right? The Kabbalism toque. It's so weird.
It's truther stuff right there.
Why would anyone want to buy this? Like I said, if this is what you're into, that's fine. But when we see you pushing an agenda, promoting many agendas, we've got to call it out and show people, hey, we're documenting this. What's that, a lion dragon?
A little Saturn worship with a
globe earth in the center.
Ouroboros,
snake eating the tail.
A globe earth.
A triangle made out of cheese, I guess, or the moon.
This is one of those shapes that
it's Morpheus. Mobius
strip.
Thank you.
You got it.
I looked into the fact that reality might be Mobius. I've studied these things. But this is clearly, this is what they are, right? Do you want to do the song break?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a quick break and we'll get into this interview.
Sometimes you just gotta smile. Keep moving to give the pain away. Sometimes you just gotta smile. When you got a feeling you need to escape and stay cool, alive. Hold on so tight. It's all I protect now. I won't let you down. We know what to do. Immortalized and held in our hands with gold in our hearts. Never will we part. Immortalized hands we shake with our hands with gold in our hearts. Never will we part again. These shoes were laced for the miles. I keep moving. The pain won't pave the way. Sometimes you just gotta smile. Breathe in and exhale. Let it all wash away and stay cool. Alive. Hold on, not so tight. It's all I protect now. I won't let you down. You know what to do. Immortalized and held in our hands with gold in our hearts. Never will we part. Immortalized hands we shake with our hands with gold in our hearts. Never will we part again. Never will we part. Never will we part again. I'm gonna show you the way I know best. Oh yes. Never will we part. I'm gonna show you the way I know best. Oh yes. Never will we part again.
We are back.
Yeah, we don't just bring content out each and every week. We go everywhere that you can possibly go. We try to find the best new music. That was Smile, performed by Foreign Air. Keep tuned into our podcast. Share it with anyone out there that might be looking for some different perspectives and some new music, okay? That was, again, a brand new track called Smile, performed by Foreign Air. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe and share this content anywhere that you can. Let's get into this, bro.
Yeah, so we're going to be going through this interview here, and we're doing it from the YouTube site. Unfortunately, they just give a static thumbnail. They don't share the video.
Not on camera.
I guess you got to pay for that or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know how it goes. Stop me anytime you want, brother.
Man.
Hey, it's awesome to be here. You're one of my favorites. I'll be on anytime. So thank you for that.
Wow. Too kind. And thank you for being here. I never thought I'd see this day. This is quite a saga. And I want to make sure we give people all the important context for it. I'm not sure how closely the people listening here have followed these events, but they know the person you were. You were a big flat earth guest for me, making a really well-rounded case for the flat earth. And You've done that for hundreds and hundreds of hours year after year until December of last year, 2024. Someone named Pastor Will Duffy, who has a background in finance of some kind, I understand, and is oddly obsessed with what flat earthers believe, created the final experiment and gave an opportunity to a group of 4 flat earthers and 4 globe earthers to go down to the Union Glacier Base in Antarctica, 80 degrees south, to experience the 24-hour always visible sun, which is not compatible with the most popular models of flat earth. And you came home convinced to change.
Not compatible with the most popular, but it is exactly what the model that we've been sharing for the last 8 years predicted to 100th of a degree per second. Talk about that, please, guys.
Change your mind and come back to the globe. Talk to us about this trip coming together and who really organized it. What's the money behind it? What's the story there?
I mean, the money is Will Duffy's. He's a pastor who I guess had a friend who was on Facebook posting about flat earth and he thought she was joking. And so he kind of jumped in and was kind of clapping back. And then he found out that she's not joking. So he tried to debate her, tried to get her convinced that the earth was a sphere. And he realized that he didn't even know enough about the model to even be able to debate her. So he started to look into it and kind of came to the conclusion that it was a globe. And then he was just getting tired of watching flat earth versus globe earth because he says that we didn't get together, kind of like you said in your intro, that there was no coming together. There was no experiments that both sides agreed on. So he started to look for a way or some sort of thing that could convince both sides one way or the other. So then he heard Dave Weiss and a couple other people saying that there's no 24-hour sun in the south, and he saw that the globe earthers say that there was. So that was basically
Just
it.
gonna
He then,
pause. So the real story is that he vehemently hated the idea that the earth was flat. It breaks the programming and conditioning that he obviously profits from. So he came up with this narrative. And if you actually follow the research and the information and the timing, the first thing that happened was Will had MC Toon, Michael Toon, and F'd Up World Joe Hill debate at Will Duffy's church, where he allowed MC Toon to get up and completely blaspheme the word of the Bible, completely. And after that, he then went on to debate Witsit on Jaren's Debatism channel. And after that, he then began pushing the narrative behind the scenes that there was something called the final experiment, where he hid his identity, went on to Sean from Kingdom in Context, which is the Christian version, supposedly, of Jeranism, who's a, what does he push? He's a, what do they call them? A Zionist? No, he pushes the Old Testament laws, crazy stuff like that. He went on Sean's channel and Sean asked him if he knew about the final experiment, and he lied and said no. And then he revealed himself as the final experiment character, and the whole story with Wendy was brought forth. And they also at the same time brought out other crazy characters that we may or may not get into. Joe Handy was the guy that they brought out in his impossible continuation of the pressurized pizza dome.
I think Judaizer was the word you were looking for.
Thank you. Yeah. A complete Judaizer, who was the one who was very intertwined with all of this rollout. So the true story is that's how Will Duffy came onto the scene. It was through MC Toon, who did a public debate at his church and completely, again, blasphemed the word of the creator.
did a poll on YouTube. He was going to pay for one flat earther, one globe earther. So the poll came out and people voted on Dave Weiss to be the representative from flat earth, but he declined it. And then I got second place. So when I was asked, the way that I looked at it is that the South had to be a lie. If the earth is flat, the South can't be the inverse or the opposite of the North. That's what a sphere does. So for 10 years, I've been teaching flat earth.
Pause
under
it.
the
What Jaren just did there again was create a false dichotomy. No, what's the fallacy that he created? We need Nathan Oakley on here to tell us the fallacy. So he gave a statement of fact. If this, then that can't be true, right? When in reality, there are many more options that he's hiding with that statement. So if there's a 24-hour sun in Antarctica, that does not disprove that the earth is flat in any shape or way. It talks about having a different celestial operation. It has nothing to do with the shape of the ground and how it is actually measured, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, the reason we heard about flat earth, we came into it, we learned about the pressurized pizza dome. And then as soon as we heard about the southern star rotations, we understood the earth had two poles and that the single pole model absolutely fails. Not a single part of it works whatsoever. And We've been saying it for 8 years now, right?
Yeah, I mean, Tim Osman, an absolute troll that would go on porn bombing people and sniping them on their own podcast by joining in Google Hangouts in the back chats and kicking you out of your own podcast and playing porn on your channel so that you would get strikes and lose your channel. He told Jaron that there were 2 different poles in the sky with different rotations of the stars 8-9 years ago. Okay, it wasn't hard to figure out that the pressurized pizza dome was a lie, right? But Jaron profited off it.
Assumption or the prerequisite that the South was a lie. So I knew, okay, let me go down there. Let me take a look at the sky down there. Let me look at the South Celestial Pole, see if it actually moves. Just all kinds of questions I had. So I went and then saw that the South is exactly as described. So I had pretty much no choice but to come back and say that we were wrong, because if the South isn't, an expanding plane like you expect it to be, if there is a South Pole, if there is a South Celestial Pole, the sun setting right to left
So
for people in the South.
So while he's doing his agenda, he's trying to damage control and lace different scenarios trying to protect the globe Earth. Listen, if you have a South Pole and then a different celestial South Pole and they don't align, you've got a problem, right? If you live on a spinning sphere, you have a North Pole in the sphere and a South Pole in the sphere. That's it. There aren't multiple different poles. Anybody tells you any different than that, they are disinforming you, right? Jaron's already trying to do damage control for topics that aren't even brought up, but this is what he was hired to do.
Well, the magnetic poles, North and South Pole, do not align with the celestial poles. So that's the reason why there's declination maps and stuff like that. But like Ron was saying, if you didn't have the magnetic poles at the celestial poles and you're on a spinning globe, you would have a serious problem.
Rather than we see it in the North go left to right, pretty cut and dry. The Earth is a sphere. I no longer have any doubt. So hey, the good thing is I was a truth seeker. I was looking for the truth. It took
clip. That was stupid. You're going to hear Jaron say really idiotic, confusing statements. And this is also heavily CIA tactic. What they'll do is be confusing to you as the listener, have you mentally falling, and as soon as they come with the truth, they catch you into the trap. It's a programmed, mind-controlled, Tavistokian CIA tactic. Do the research on it. You will find that what I'm saying is absolutely true. And he uses confusing statements like left to right or right to left. The actual way to explain this to any observer or viewer is holding a compass, right? Pointing the compass north, right? You will see the sun rise from the east and set in the west. The sun's path will either be traveling south of east or north of east and setting north of west or south of west. There's no left or right because all that's dependent on the direction you're looking, and he's not giving you a heading. He is confusing people on purpose. And we've explained this to him for almost a decade, right? And
yeah, the Globers use these oversimplified terms that confusing where a person really can't get their bearings. Like Ron said, the left to right, right to left thing. I hate it. It drives me nuts. It's like hearing globe earthers say that Earth is round, right? So I mean that's not the shape. It's either a globe or round. Round is a word that is ambiguous because it can be a circle too. So they use the ambiguous terms, the confusing. You don't get your base, and leave you absolutely confused.
It took me 10 freaking years. But I did get to the bottom of it now at this point. You think my audience would be happy about that, but they're not.
Right. That is what I thought the goal was here too, is to find the ultimate truth. And
so
a lot of people, they're flatter.
I'll try not to do this too much. So what Jaron's here is doing is the classic abusive narcissistic tactic. So you go around in grief and abuse, right? And then when your victim says, hey, stop abusing me, you call them, how dare you? I'm an honest person. I'm truthful. When he literally is, he radicalized a whole group of people, abused them, and then he turned on them and he became the abused or the victim, right? He's now playing that role when he literally is a griefer. If you want to know what a griefer is, that's somebody that wants to go around and cause harm and inflict mental trauma upon other people. That is literally what Jaron Campanella has made his whole entire career off of.
Yeah, griefer is the kid that knocks down your sandcastle that you worked on building all day, or goes into your Minecraft world and destroys something that you've been working on for large amounts of time. Those people that enjoy hurting people like that, they're called griefers. I can't believe that they exist, but there's a lot of them actually.
Earth journey is, hey, I thought this was ridiculous. Then I heard some of the arguments. Then I was just waiting for it to be disproven, and it wasn't disproven, so I became a flat earther. Well, you took the journey down there and apparently disproved it. Now, if I was someone attached to the flat earth idea, I might say, well, just because you go to one base in Antarctica, in the frozen tundra out there, how can you say the whole globe's south is basically what they say it is? You're just at this one base. You have a 360-degree view of what, a square mile or a couple square miles? Tell us more about how you were convinced. It's not just a light in the sky, right? There's other elements to it. You filmed the whole plane ride from Sydney to Santiago, something people say can't work the way flight routes work. Talk to us about some of these other bits of information.
So hold on.
Sure.
Like,
So
how did Greg have that agenda lined up like that? So it's not just the 24-hour sun. It's also, you know, all this other information. If Greg is just the innocent fence-sitting bystander that doesn't have a dog in the fight, why is he literally teeing it up for Jaron like on a T-ball?
Well, in Sydney to Santiago's, that's something old. Because Jaron's coming from California to Argentina,
I'm
right?
pretty sure he said Punta Arenas, right? From
No, he talked about Sydney to Santiago.
Can't work the way flight routes work. Talk to us about some of these other Sydney to Santiago, something people say can't work the way flight routes work. Talk to us about some of these other bits of information.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, the South needs to be a lie. So we went down there to check it out. And you're right. There is a lot of people who say that, oh, hey, you just saw one item. You were just in one place. But I don't think what people understand is that the globe has been mapped. The Earth has been mapped on a globe. And so if you're going to take somebody to 80 degrees south, 81 degrees west, well, then the sun has to do what it's required to do there. So it doesn't have an option to go somewhere else. It doesn't have an option that we just went to this one place. It's that it had to do what the sun is called for to do on the globe model. And it did exactly that. So it was at its high of 35 degrees in the north,
So
and
it's
its low
not
of
true.
15 degrees in the south.
So the first off, they've never mapped a globe. No one, right? That you can't get high enough in altitude to see more than what, Jason, 200 miles at best, and not be all fuzzy and pixelated out.
Yeah, you can really only discern things within about a 60 to 70 mile radius, even at the highest of altitudes.
So they've
like 300,000 feet.
So they've never mapped a globe, right? Right. So that's right off the bat a lie. And then he continues to lie and spin the narratives. Continue.
And just circled us for 4 days, doesn't set. And so that plus many other things contributed. So also, I think I'd heard this before, but never really saw it. If you think of the flat Earth map that you've seen before, the layout, the AE map, if you kind of picture yourself standing at the bottom of South America, looking west, well, the sun, when it sets, needs to go off to the right because that's the direction where Australia is. It's over there on the flat Earth
Left
map.
and
But
right.
the sun sets to the left, and it sets hard, right, left, and then it barely goes under the horizon for about 3 or 4 hours. It sets like 11:30 at night, pops up again at 4 or 5 in the morning, and you're like, wait a second. In that dip, it actually brought light to both Australia and Africa. So then you start thinking that just doesn't work. There's no way that you can get that to work on a flat Earth. You'll never get it to work. And so originally my thought was, okay, well, somebody will come up with another map. And then the more I thought about that, I realized there is no other map. That's the only flat Earth map.
We've been here. We've been on his show. Like, we have a map that is the most accurate. You can move to any location and everything's to scale. And it's flat and it works everywhere. Not only that, we have the 3D sun simulator that shows the path of the sun at any latitude, any longitude, any day of the year, anywhere on Earth, accurate to 100th of a degree per second.
On a flat plane, measurably.
The globe has no model. They literally can't have a model. They would have to build the model to scale and it would be impossible to view. no less build, right?
Map there can ever be, because there are things that we know are physical requirements, right? The Tropic of Capricorn has to be there. That's the southernmost spot that the sun goes. Tropic of Cancer has to be there. That's the northernmost. The equator on the equinox, and the North Pole kind of required. So once you lay that out and then you lay the continents in the order they have to be, it is an AE map. So it'll always be an AE map. It will never not be.
No, the AE map is stretched out where
Super impossible.
Keeps inflating beyond the equator, where we know that the lines of latitude get smaller as you head towards the South Pole.
Longitude.
Latitude distances get shorter as you head south towards the pole.
And there'll never be another flat map. So the fact that the sun sets right to left for everybody in the south and the sun sets left to right for everybody in the north is pretty blatant right there, because the flat earth map has one sun doing it would be clockwise motion above the flat earth. So what would cause it to set in a different direction for people in the south versus the north? And then also there's other things that go with that, like on the globe, on the equinox, somebody standing on the equator would actually see the sun rise straight up and down. It's like a straight line, right? East to west. And that also doesn't work on a flat earth, because the flat earth has a circling sun. So what would cause it to all of a sudden it gets to the equator and it's like, well, now I'm not going to circle, I'm going to go straight. But then it circles on both sides, either side. So there's that. I mean, there's the South Celestial Pole, which, since it was 24 hours of daylight in Antarctica, didn't see the South Celestial Pole there, but we saw it in Punta Arenas, which is the southernmost city in South America. So once you see that and it's stationary in the sky, it operates just like the North Pole or the North Star, only the stars go the opposite direction, which would be clockwise there. And so then you know what's below that, right? You can kind of infer from that. We were 600 miles from the pole, but you can't have a South Celestial Pole and there be no South Pole. And if you have a South Pole, that also debunks a flat earth map, because the flat earth doesn't have a South Pole. So if you want to really confuse a flat earther, ask them where the South Pole is. They will have to say everywhere, because that's the only answer.
So it sounds like you maybe kind of had some doubts before you actually took the journey. Is that safe to say? Or were you really 100% on board until this happened?
No, I mean, I thought that the trip would be canceled. A couple of these things have come up in the past and they were always fake, or they ended up being canceled. So I kind of thought that, but I did know that ultimately, if it was real, that, the trip would probably happen, and then we'd have to go down and see. And then we also thought maybe we'd go down there and there'd be clouds in the sky. So we'd kind of be clouded over for 4 days. But we got there and it was beautiful. The first day, the plane lands right there on the ice. Unbelievable. We went to Union Glacier. They took us to a secondary camp, which is kind of away from the main camp, just about 3 miles, not very far. But from there, we were able to set up and do our 24-hour live streams and all that, and our 24-hour videos. And so, yeah, it was great. I mean, awesome trip. $35,000 for free. Can't beat that. I'm telling that pastor now I don't believe in oceanside property in Hawaii either. So maybe you can send me there.
I like that. So I do have questions about Will Duffy. I am not even vested in the argument, but I do find it strange that a person would care so much as to spend 35 grand, maybe just for you. I don't know the total cost. I'm thinking 6 figures, possibly.
Oh, easily.
Yeah, okay. 100 grand of their own money to convince strangers they don't know about the shape of the earth. If you're confident that the flat earth is dumb and those people are dumb, move on. Like, you have to think that he knows that it's not going to convince everybody, that people are pretty much dug in to their perspective, and something they see through a screen, your trip, is not going to convince them. Is he focused on just convincing the actual 4 who are literally there? I just think it's a little weird. And of course, flat earthers have gone after his background since this has happened. And it is a little strange. He's been sued in the 6-figure numbers for fiduciary duties when he was in finance. And now he's a pastor. And I think, if I was trying to dissuade flat earthers away from their position, a pastor is a perfect person to do it, because there is a religiosity to the whole argument. So a pastor subconsciously says, hey, you don't have to give up your religion. You just have to give up your physical model. So I find,
All right. That was an important point. The using of a pastor for the PSYOP because of the religiosity of the whole argument, right? So the fake pastor making this religious, remember everybody, the religious aspect of the globe earth comes from the Vatican. They created the geocentric model. They created the heliocentric model. They came up with the Big Bang. That is the religiosity, is being a space baller.
Conspiracy guy, I have to wonder what the hell's going on. What are your thoughts on Will Duffy and why he cares so much?
Yeah, I mean, his story checks out as far as why he cares so much as far as with me. And he did seem to...
His story checks out.
I wouldn't know what having money is like. So I think that, a lot of people talk about him like as if he's one of us, that he's, he's basically struggling to get by. I don't think that that's the case. So, if somebody had, let's just say, and I have no idea if this is a number even close to what, but if you had $10 million, maybe it'd feel a little differently if you decided, hey, I want to go spend $100,000 on.
So he's just going hypothetical situation in defense Will here, just making up numbers out of the blue
on this trip, and maybe my name will be put in the paper. Maybe I'll get some sort of accolades for it if I help change the minds of a bunch of flat earthers. And it really has been a kick in the pants to flat earth because so many people have left, right? So I was the first one who came back and just said, hey, the earth doesn't look like it's flat. In fact, it's shown to be a sphere. And then shortly after that, Paul on the Plane is somebody who came out and admitted that he also agrees that the earth is not flat. Robbie Davidson, who's the one who put on the first 3 or 4 conferences. I know he invited me to Raleigh, North Carolina. He was in charge of that. He also invited me to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And also he was in charge of the one in Denver. So he did those 3 plus more, I think. And he also came out and made a post on Facebook saying, here's my 10 points. This is why I now believe the earth's a sphere. So that ended up being kind of, flat earthers looked at that as suspicious because those 3 are friends and those 3 were involved in the same YouTube channel where they were selling some cryptocurrency called Axion. So people have pointed fingers at that and said,
so they were all selling cryptocurrency. Robbie Davidson was always a Bitcoin scam artist, and it was Todd Le Bon. He was the one that exposed Robbie Davidson as being a crypto charlatan. He showed that Robbie ran a scam who drove from coast to coast in Canada, getting people to start investing in Bitcoin, giving out a free prize, which I don't think anyone ever got the free prize, right? It was supposed to give away Bitcoin or something like that. It never took place. So you have the characters, Paul, Patricia, and Robbie, all on a podcast together promoting and selling Bitcoin. Again, these are opportunists.
Jaron is no stranger to being a Bitcoin scammer himself.
Yeah.
We pointed that out a long time ago that you just do a Google search for Jeranism Bitcoin scammer, and it's probably been scrubbed now, but we've got it documented. There was just pages of reports of Jaron being a Bitcoin scam artist.
Yeah. He got away with a bunch of it too. So he was heavily invested in Bitcoin. So it's funny how they're all yoked up together.
Said, oh, this is to get them out of financial issue or trouble. And then there's been a lot of other people that have backed out, but not really any major names besides those ones. So yeah, it is definitely weird, everything that's gone on. But Duffy to me was always honest. He was good to me. Again, the guy's buying me a $35,000 trip. So that's a good way to get friendly with me if you want to buy me a trip. But he seems like he's on the up and up. And
Gross.
He did kind of turn sinister over the time period. And I kind of gave him a hard time for that. I'm like, man, this guy was a really nice guy at the beginning. And then towards the end, he started to really kind of be like this character, almost like the villain to flat earthers. But I have to give him a break because then when I came back and became a globe earther, it took me like a month. And I was just yelling at people. So it's like he lasted 6 months at least before he became the villain. I didn't get that far. I was just already pissed off. So yeah, it's been kind of crazy because they are displaying a lot of cult-like activity. They've had to adopt some new sayings that they
The guys whose channel name is Jeranism, the ism.
came up with. One of them is, you can't tell the shape of the ground by the lights in the sky, which is just insanity to even say, because what they're doing is they're just outlawing a certain line of evidence. And that's not allowed anywhere else. We don't have lines of evidence that people can just come around and say, oh, we don't look at that. Well, no, we can look at the blood splatter on the wall to get the murder weapon. And we can look at a woman's urine to see if she's pregnant. So you can look other places or things for evidence of another thing. So, we have a measuring stick in the sky, and that is the sun. And it's a measuring stick because a measuring thing is just rigid. It has to be the same, right? So a ruler, you can take it around, measure everything, and get your inches or whatever. But with the sun, it doesn't change. It's 24 hours. It goes around the earth in 24 hours. It's got its known path. It's been known for thousands of years. So there is no question there. So you can take a map. If I handed you a map, you should be able to look at it and make sure it jives with the sun. If it doesn't, then you don't live where the map says. So there is no jiving the earth with the flat earth map anymore. It doesn't account for anything. So it's pretty simple to me, and that's what's so sad about it.
The AE map was actually created to be a sun calculator. So they took the sun clock, calculator. So they took the baller theory, they turned it into a flat version, and they stretched Antarctica, the southern part of the ball, out to infinity around the outside of it. And then they scaled it so that they could measure the sun's position around the AE map. It's pretty funny.
Oh, you're like, man, I wish we could just move forward. There's so many conspiracies to look into. There's so many things that we should be putting our focus on. And instead, there's this fight going on, truther fight. And that's why I do ultimately think it is some sort of a psyop where it actually steals from the truth movement. Because anybody who's educated or works in...
So when the flat earth came out, Jeranism came onto the scene with a channel with 15,000 subscribers right away that he... Apparently, the word was that he bought it with Bitcoin, paid for the views and the fake subscriptions. And he was anti-Christian. And he came out, and there was another channel that was called Jeff C., who's passed away. He was an old school, like one of the original, YouTube podcasters who went against Jaron, saying that, Jaron, you're promoting the flat earth, the AE map, and it's disinformation meant to discredit all the truth movement. And Jaron mocked Jeff and did like an hour video where he insulted him. You can go ahead and find it. I think it's on Jaron's Odyssey channel. He's got one of those where he's put all the videos that he's taken down from YouTube, and you can see him go after Jeff C for saying the same things that he's now saying a decade later.
Mm-hmm.
In those departments or works in those sectors, if they hear somebody's a flat earther, they're just going to dismiss them outright, and probably rightfully so. And that hurts the truth movement, because you might have other people looking into things, 9/11, whatever you want to say, COVID. And if you then say, oh, I'm also a flat earther, then it kind of discounts all your other work. So it's unfortunate, but I get it, because a lot of truthers have gotten to the point where they say, well, they're lying to us about everything. So this is just another thing to add in there. Although I feel better knowing that at least we weren't lied to about everything.
Yes, and that was my problem even 7 years ago with the budding flat earth
Hold
movement.
on.
Is
Did
it
he
just
just
seemed like
backhandedly say that the government's been and the Catholic Church have been telling us the truth about the shape of the earth? Wow.
like two flat earthers. If I wasn't on board with that, then nothing else mattered. I might as well be a normie shopping at Walmart, watching American Idol at night. And there's no nuance.
Pause it. You can hear the disdain in their voices. They were pissed off and they were angry that people weren't accepting them if they were going around saying that the earth was a sphere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you wanted to be in the truther community, I mean, you got to talk about flat earth. That's the biggest news there is out there.
Well, yeah, Jeff C's logo was the microphone, and he also had the swirl, and then he became the all-seeing eye on the top. And you can see here that Greg, he's also got the alien agenda. What do you think happens when you realize that there's no outer space and that you can't go anywhere? Well, unfortunately, it destroys the whole alien agenda.
Mm-hmm.
At all. And that was troubling to me. Sure. And I agree. Cult-like behavior, it does take away from all the other real world conspiracies. I've had a lot of guests recently that focus on geopolitics. They think we're a year away from a...
So it's a filter. If you have people talking about other topics that think that they're on a spinning ball, a person that knows that they're not on a spinning ball can see that you're dealing with a heavily deceived person. I mean, you're a person that's been eating up the propaganda. You're programmed by the New World Order. If you can't at least see through the fact that you're not on a spinning ball flying through space.
Serious World War III. And yet there's just shows like Globebusters going after the same thing they've talked about for 5 years. It's like, well, where is the nuance? Where is saving some time for...
Jaron ran the Globebusters for like 8 years, and all they did was watch SpaceX walks or the ISS. Like 8 years straight. They never changed their narrative once.
Green screen glitch, right? That's all they did.
The vast number of false flags, assassinations, coups, globalism, Zionism, all these things that should be talked about. It's a curious thing. I understand the obsession because it is paradigm shifting more so than any other thing. And a lot of us got into conspiracy because we got a little charge from having our mind blown by something. And then that probably goes away until flat earth. And then your mind is truly blown to that next level and you don't want to go back. But I do want to get a little bit into the aftermath of all this. I don't know, David Weiss. In fact, the last message you and I had on Facebook where we communicate was a couple years ago. You asked if I would bring on Flat Earth Dave and you together. And I had said that I was happy that I did a couple of Flat Earth shows, but I didn't want it to take over the show. So I didn't want to do that. And I always had fond memories of our interview and fond feelings of you. I probably wouldn't even paid that much attention to the Antarctic trip if you weren't the guy there. That made me more vested in it. And now I want to know about what happened since, because it seems like after a decade, you and Dave are no longer friends, and even your own community and other flat earth researchers have turned really nasty towards you, all because you changed your mind on one issue that, in the grand scheme, is it that serious? Is it that big of a deal?
Obviously, it is that big of a deal. These people have really gone to levels I never even expected. And that's saying something.
Tell us about that. What has happened?
So let's just start at the beginning. When I got back, the number one thing.
I don't know how much of this we can skip. I mean, this is the just nonsense stuff. So Jaron is a griefer, right? That goes around griefing the community. He's literally took money from people for almost a decade, right? Telling them lies. And now, because he is given a new agenda, he's now attacking those people while saying that he's the victim, right? And that's all. And David Weiss, you know, we'd have to have David Weiss on, and we have to go through everything that we see and hear his answers to really get to the bottom of who David Weiss really is and what his agenda is. I don't even want to throw him under the bus. I want to actually, he should come on and talk about how he was knighted on that show and why he continues to push things that are easily debunkable. We'd have to have him on, but again, Jaron goes on that whole section talking about how he's the victim now, and it's just ridiculous.
You know, what was I doing up there? Which that is the Great Circle route. But if you put that on an AE map, a flat Earth map, it's a straight line. So it's very easy to convince people, no, you're just flying this straight line. You're not flying this crazy arc over the globe.
Right. And the UN flag. I've always liked the UN flag argument because where I try to find common ground with the flat earthers is to say, you know, look, I appreciate the punk rock spirit of every couple of years, I find a new thing you've lied to me about. Well, fuck you. I'm going all the way to the top and everything below. There's no way you can lie to me now because I believe the exact inverse of everything you've ever taught me because fuck you. I actually appreciate that spirit. I can find common ground. I try to, you know, it takes two to tango. They can't find common ground with me, but I definitely appreciate that attitude.
Yeah, and those are my people too, right? I mean, that's, I went and spoke down in LA at a skeptic camp. They wanted me to come speak about the trip, and I went down there and I met this girl.
They have skeptic camps.
This story is gross. It's crazy too.
Send Jaron to a skeptic camp. His mom probably paid for it.
After who was asking me if I want to smoke and this and that, I was like, yeah, we'll hang out after. Then she started going into this thing about how she was almost in a cult because she almost believed that there was a trans agenda and she almost believed that Trump was a good guy. And I was like, oh man. And then she started calling me that night. I just didn't answer because it's like, these are not my people.
Yeah. So the things I've seen written and said about you online are brutal, completely uncalled for something so arbitrary as a personal feeling about the earth shape. Even losing friends over that is sad to me. But I think the reason so many people are angry and having such an emotional reaction is because you spent 10 years making every pro-flat earth argument there is, looking at experiments, elaborating in depth on why the flat earth model makes more sense. And then one event, one new data point, essentially, you know, you just kind of laid out how it's more than one thing, has you doing a complete 180. I think people would be far less reactionary if you said something like, the 24-hour sun was not what I expected to see. I need to revisit this and see how it all fits together. Because aren't there still a ton of pro-flat earth arguments that would be irrelevant to the sun? Not to quote Eric Dubay, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things like pilots never angling their planes downward, water finding its level, as you mentioned. Time-lapse photography of the stars has always been interesting to me and curious. Seeing things across distances that should be under curvature, never seen curvature without a curved lens. And my favorite, zooming in on ships that have crossed the horizon point and seen that they are still visible. That's a head.
So he is literally using completely false information. You cannot zoom something in that's gone beyond the horizon. Beyond the horizon cannot be zoomed back in. This is false information that was put out right at the beginning. I think Eric Dubay, I think, is the first one to bring it up and put it into videos. And it's CGI. It's not real. Anybody can actually go out and witness that when something's too far away and it's beyond the horizon, you cannot zoom it back in again. That pure lie. And so he's acting like he's some sort of got some sort of flat earth favoritism by saying, oh, you can zoom these things back in, when it's absolutely not true. It's fully a lie.
It's disinformation meant to have you debunked with the control narrative. So when something goes beyond the vanishing point, it's gone. You can't zoom it back in, right? The only people that say that is NASA. They say they can zoom into the outer reaches of the universe. The only thing you can do is rise in altitude and enlarge in your circle of sight, right? And that was an argument that's set up. And you'll hear another argument too, like simply crossing Antarctica would settle the debate, when we've been saying that Antarctica is a continent that you can absolutely cross. And that has nothing to do with the fact that there's no curvature.
Head scratcher. It's okay to have an event and new data shake your confidence, but I think it's the full 180, the either or flip, that is making people so angry with you.
Well, that's multiple things, right? So one of the things was that my plan was, when I was coming back, was, okay, I'm going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to have to relook at things again. And what happened instead is everybody was calling it fake. Half the group was calling it fake. The other half of the group was saying it doesn't matter. And it became very clear to me that we no longer have the people in the movement that actually want to do the work. They now think that they're so sure that the Earth's flat that they can just make up excuses for anything that comes and goes against your worldview. Well, I saw that as a problem. That's a cult. If everything that comes from outside your worldview is just declined and said it doesn't exist or is fake or doesn't matter, well, then you'll always be stuck in that belief, regardless of your actual merit. So one of the things was when I got back, I started hearing that every flat map predicted a 24-hour sun. And this guy, Stephen Alonso, that has his own school, Flat Earth School or something, started saying that. And then I started hearing other people say it, and they said it so matter of fact. And I'm like, that's
These characters that get brought up are the controlled opposition. We've been calling them out as soon as they pop up, and now that one's gone. We haven't seen them in a long time now. Controlled op.
just BS. There is no flat map that calls for a 24-hour sun. So where are you getting every flat map
Ours does, and we said it long before the Antarctica trip was set up, the final experiment, right?
calls for it? Well, these are just lies that are told by people who at this point, I think, know what's going on. I think that they know that they've got this audience kind of where they want them. So now the grifters are pouring in. And now some of these guys that just don't seem to be honest to me. And then you had like Eric Dubay, right? Eric Dubay, who has a book, 200 Proofs. And in that book, it says that the 24-hour sun doesn't happen in the South. So when we said we were going down there, the very first thing he did was put out a video saying it doesn't matter if the sun does circle down there because Lady Blount in 1905 or something said that they acknowledged, this is a TEDx acknowledged that there's a 24-hour sun. But then she says in the next sentence, but we have no way of explaining it. So the same thing is true 120 years later, that there's no way of explaining it. And so it doesn't matter if she said it. And then if she said it and he knew that, why did he put it in his 200 proofs? Because now it's not a proof anymore, since it's obviously the opposite. So then when we got back, he made a video saying that we faked it inside of an Amazon studio. So these guys are just, at this point, they'll make up anything. And then the community itself, because they're so gung-ho, I don't know if you've seen these guys on Facebook and stuff, they're rude. They're like children. I keep describing it as my metaphor for it is it's like you're at a bowling alley and there's a professional bowling team bowling on 2 lanes and they're throwing 230s and 240s and just nailing it, strikes, spares. And next to them, they put a bunch of snot-nosed kids that have bumpers up and they're yelling and they're screaming and they're telling the bowlers, the professional bowlers, you guys suck. And they're like, what? You're bowling 7s and 4s. And they're like, yeah, but you guys suck and we do it better than you. And they're like, you certainly don't. And then there's even some guys on their team that are like, we don't have lanes, we don't have balls, we don't throw. We just know we're better than you. Because that's what Flat Earth is now. At this point, they actually say, we don't have a map, we don't have a model, we make no claims. But
we have a map model that's been around for 8 years now.
Then you don't do science, go home. Because you can't come into a scientific conversation with no claim, no map, no model. That's the point of science, is to make claims and then back them up with evidence, and whichever one best fits the observations is probably the truth. So Flat Earth has gone away from that.
Well, I agree with you on one hand. On another hand, it's been a common thing for me to have to point out that just because I can show a lie doesn't mean I have to explain the truth. Like 9/11 is a great example. How did those buildings fall? Just because I can't explain it to a T doesn't mean that what you were told was the truth. It doesn't mean it was planes. Was it nanothermite? Was it Judy Wood's, directed energy weapons? I don't know, but I know you were lied to on that day. That's what's important. So, just because the flat earthers don't have a model doesn't mean Eric Dubay can't write a book, 200 Proofs, and point out, hey, all these things you take for granted about your conventional model, these things don't add up. Now, what is the real model? That's a whole nother question. That's not for me to say. But let me just throw this out. So it sounds like people's behavior is shitty. The most predictable thing ever is that you are going to get shit for flipping on this. But people's shitty behavior is totally separate from the objective facts and the objective argument and trying to figure out what this thing is. And it sounds like, and I understand being hurt or being pissed off from these reactions, but is there any part of you that thinks maybe that you've gone totally the other direction out of spite, out of just anger at the reaction you got? That you're now like, you know what, fuck you guys, you're now in fuck you mode. You're just kind of like, what, look at you changed your logo, with the big X over it. That's kind of a bit trolly, as you know, like you could have made it something else.
Yeah, I definitely went there. And I think that the plan was to kind of come back and figure it out together, to kind of go back to the drawing board. And then, I kind of felt like it was a sphere coming back from the trip. But yeah, to get back and see the people that I was coming back to who accused us of faking everything, it's all fake footage. And that's just garbage, because what that showed me is that there'll never be an observation that somebody makes again that will cause Flat Earth to realize, oh, we have to fix something. No, not if you just dismiss everything outright. And they really just say, no, we'll move on. So while you don't have to provide, if you point out a lie, but if you point out a lie and it's shown to not be a lie, then you got a problem, right? So you can't just claim something's a lie. For instance, if we're talking about the sun, the globe Earth describes the sun perfectly. Every sunrise, every sunset, every angle. The Flat Earth doesn't do any of that. It can't predict one. So it's not okay to just say, well, we still think the Earth's flat. Okay, well, you have to explain something. How about the sun? How about the moon? Nope, can't explain any of those. So it's a flip, because to me, I thought everybody knew this, but I guess I'm finding out they didn't. The South has to be a lie. The Flat Earth cannot be true.
So they've had to move the goalpost so far with the sun that it's 93 million miles away, right? And also it has to be local in some cases for it to be literally circling around Jaren's head in Antarctica. Well, also circling around the Tropic of Capricorn. Well, also angling above Jaren's head, circling just above him with short shadows, right? So
Short shadows.
every-
That's the big one. Short shadows.
everything that they do is twisted and inverted and flipped against the actual truth. This podcast, and we're getting through some of it. I don't know if we're going to get through it all. Let's see. Let's keep going.
Also, inverse square law.
If the south is the inversion or the opposite of the north, it just can't. That's not part of it. And then when you start looking at other things like, you can look at the distance between longitude lines. So say 1 degree of longitude. If you go down to just Australia and measure 1 degree of longitude, southern Australia would be about 45 miles. If you draw out the flat earth map and show that same spot, then take the circumference of that circle divided by 360, comes out to like 160. So we just know that the areas that say 45 miles in Australia are not 160. That's 4 times as far. That would
This is the stuff that we've been using to debunk the AE map and model the last 8 years.
be impossible for them to hide. Somebody would get in their car to drive an hour to meet their friend. They'd get there 4 hours later. They'd be a little bit questioning that. So we've got a clear-cut shape of the earth. And while I agree with a lot of the flat earth, like you said, so you're talking about the evidence that we found. Well, if you go to a murder scene and there's 3 pairs of shoes, they're all evidence, right? It's all evidence. And 2 of them are going to lead you in the wrong direction. And one of them is going to lead you to the true killer. So the same thing is true about what we observe on earth, that it's all evidence. So when you say we see too far, that's evidence, right? But the globe earth has an answer for it, which makes sense. We see too far because geometrically there's no atmosphere. So you're just drawing lines on a graph paper or whatever on a plot and saying, hey, we can only see this far. But you add an atmosphere and anybody knows that that's like a magnifying glass. It does actually magnify the distant items that we see. We can't really tell, we're always in it. But when you are looking geometrically, we can see further than the geometry of the earth calls for. And then there's stuff like refraction that I used to have questions about, but we've actually seen it now into play where you can hide a little thumbtack behind a globe and by putting like a piece of lens in front of anything, it'll bring it right back up from behind the globe. So that explains
Magic
why we
trick.
see too far.
Parlor tricks, right? Yeah.
It's just the items that are behind the curve are bent up slightly. That light is curving to your eye, which kind of allows you to see further than you should. Water finds its level. We talked about that, right? That it is always level. No matter where you're at, the water is level. So all the flat earth arguments are now gone. They don't have one that is even worth talking about, which is sad, but it's the truth. And so I want people to get that across. And I just realized now
Lies.
that yesterday it went so far as that now it's gone to revenge porn as of yesterday. So these guys will stop at nothing. They're going to continue to attack me simply because they can't have me being a former flat earther speaking out against the flat earth. But I've said from day one that I would always be honest, like you said, always honest, sometimes right. For 10 years, I was wrong about that particular subject, but it's still, we were bringing up some good points. These things were true. There's nothing that's a lie. We see
Jaren didn't
okay,
bring
great.
up any
Like you
good points. I challenge anyone out there to send me a video or evidence of Jaren proving that the earth was flat. If I had a Bitcoin, I would offer it, but I don't. I'm not into Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, he never did. He just talked about NASA. That's all he did. And said because NASA gets all this money, he should be able to too.
Coffee cup caustic.
He said pulling boats back. That kind of exposes one part of it, right? That kind of tells us that the idea of, they knew this in the year negative 200 BC. Because we know that can't be true because they said one of the ways they knew that is boats disappearing bottom up. But now when we have cameras, we can actually zoom in, bring some of those back. So that means that they wouldn't have been able to do that back then. So
all they can do, everybody tuning in, all you can do with a camera is enlarge whatever in your field of view. And due to angular resolution, some objects may look like they're gone, but then once you magnify your field of view and enlarge what's in your circle of sight, you can then see it. That's it. Once if you've enlarged until you can't enlarge it anymore, and then something goes beyond that vanishing point, you cannot bring it back into view.
Well, an angular resolution is an absolute limit to what we can see. And so that's based on the diameter of the aperture of the lens. So our eyes have a pretty small aperture. I think it's like 6 millimeters or something like that. So a P1000 that's got a camera lens like this, the larger aperture gives it more angular resolution. And so it's able to see in better detail than our eyes are. But it has to be within the circle of sight to be visible. Once it's beyond the circle of sight, you can't enlarge something that's disappeared.
they would have just seen boats disappear with their eyes and said, Earth's curved. The boat went over it. Now we look at it, we're like, no, it's actually not going away for a lot further than that. But if you keep your eyes on a boat, you can't pull it back forever. It'll eventually go over the horizon and it will disappear bottom up. So
over the horizon.
It's one of those things where
beyond the horizon.
Vanishing point.
Yeah.
I don't think it's out of spite. That has made me almost like move faster in that direction. Obviously, to just say, okay, that's it. There's no And it took me getting to the point where I just said the Earth will never be flat. I mean, I'm 100% sure it'll never be flat because there's no way you can make up for the deficiencies like the South Pole. When we were down south, I mean, if everybody's looking at the South Pole, meaning, let's say South Africa, South America, Australia, they're all facing each other. If they walk towards the South Pole, the lowest part of the sun, they'll all meet in the same spot. That's the same as the North. So that can't happen on a flat Earth. In a flat Earth, you're actually walking away from each other in opposite directions. And people try and explain that. They just can't, because what it creates is a paradox. If the Earth is mapped everywhere, and you can call any friend you have, whether it's in China, whether it's in Bangladesh, whether it's in Africa, and everybody will admit that the sunrise sunset times are correct in their location and that it matches the globe Earth. So it'd have to be at somewhere down south of 80 that it falls apart and it's no longer a sphere. Well, that doesn't even make sense. Then it becomes a paradox. So I'm all for changing my mind, dude. That's the thing.
What was that?
He's a false dichotomy, and he's not for changing his mind.
I see somebody in the chat asking how far is the circle of sight. It's a simple formula. You take the square root of the height of the observer in feet. You multiply that times 1.22459, and that gives you the answer in miles to the horizon.
I tell flat earthers all the time, I wanted the Earth to be flat, right? I didn't want it to be a globe. I wanted it to be flat. So if you can find the evidence that shows that, I'll be back there in a heartbeat. But I also realize, and it's a lot of the characters that are out there now, they've gone as far as to now steal from the globe. Let me give you an example. So there's this guy, Walter Bislin, who made this model of the Earth, and then he made it flat and did it to show the impossibilities of what we see in reality. So if you put like a little dome above a person, say over in South America, well, when the sun gets around to Australia, it's also in their dome. So the reason that Flat Earth has adopted that is because basically now you have to have two suns. You have two suns. One's what they call a parent sun, and the other one's the sun that we actually, well, they're both seen. So that's the thing. So if you're a flat earther now, you have to believe in two suns, and it just so happens that one of them is exactly where the globe predicts. So that's kind of embarrassing. So you just added a second sun to make up for the fact that you believe in a flat earth and put it where it needs to be.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And, there are videos out there of people seeing two suns, and you mentioned the magnifying glass. If there is a dome, maybe there is some kind of reflection type of thing that could be seen. Really, I just think this either or argument, it might be silly because you have to think, what is life actually? Maybe this is a paradoxical realm for the creator to have fractalized experience in a physical.
Right. Well, he was almost going towards being in a virtual reality.
Then he went to Eric Dubé's "We're All God" experiencing itself through,
He was offering another option here.
Place that shouldn't even be thought of in a materialist context, to where every aspect needs to be broken down. Even if 5 of Eric Dubé's 200 proofs have some merit, that's a problem. And vice versa for the globe earthers, and the flat earthers too. It's a little difficult. It's a little difficult to get wrapped up in the either or argument when maybe the reality is that I don't like to use hologram. I don't like to use
hologram. Why would you say hologram? Virtual reality.
Use terms like simulation, but maybe this is God's sandbox for physical experience, and we're hyper-analyzing it as if it's something objectively solid and real, and it just isn't. Maybe.
Pay attention. Yeah, maybe. Hold on. This is the most important part of the whole entire podcast. We've been fighting back and forth with Jaron for a decade, telling him that you live in a supernatural, non-physical reality where we've exposed and debunked things like atomism, showing that it's not real, outer space, not real. All of these inconsistencies are evidence for the Earth being a virtual reality. The reason that you can't completely prove either or is because it was created that way inside of a virtual reality. So this is where you've got clips, cuts. This is the most important part of the podcast. You might want to slow this back to regular speed here so that everybody can hear Jaron's answer. And I'll just repeat what Greg said. Maybe we are not living in a physical, materialistic reality, and that we're in God's sandbox experiencing what we were created to experience. Let's really hear what Jaron says here.
Let me see let's get the transcript up here.
Yeah, if you want to get them word for word, I paraphrased.
It'd give us something more to look at too.
Maybe I look at it.
Hold on, let's read it again. Hold on, go back again. Hologram, I don't like to use the terms like simulation, because simulation is implying that it's fake. Virtual reality, that's what Jason said, is something that's real. Maybe this is God's sandbox for a physical experience, and we're hyper analyzing it as if it's something objectively solid, and real, and it just isn't. Maybe I look at it all differently. I do think that you have to live with observations, whatever. Okay, here's where Jaron's going to start his disinformation. We got to let Jaron speak. So again, Jaron is going to come through with very confusing, conflicting answers, and it's all edited.
I do think that you have to jive with observations, whatever we decide on. Now, it doesn't mean that it has to, when you say either or, is it a false dichotomy? Well, the Earth is either flat or it's a sphere. There is really no other option, at least that I've ever seen. I mean, nobody's ever come forward and said,
literally false dichotomy.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, this is a big one. Everybody wants to take us out of the picture and say that it's either flat or sphere. That's it. You only get to choose that. No other choices. The whole time we've been saying stereographic biblical virtual reality.
So, well, maybe it's this reverse saddle inside, because it has to match.
Jaron made up the reverse saddle. That was on Globebusters.
And we're saying that the heavens operate in a spherical manner. They rotate around each observer, and the earth plane that we live on is flat and stationary. It mixes it and balances it together correctly. And we're the only argument out there that's censored and that's not allowed to be talked about. And when they do, they say holographic simulation nonsense that we don't want to say. And then Jaron comes out and he says that when we have to look at observations, we have to believe what we have, but whatever we think we see, we have. And then he goes on to say and continue. It's just so confusing.
Yeah, well, not only was he a reverse saddler, he was also a bunk cake earther. So how can he say that there's only the two options when he's been reverse saddle and bunk cake?
Observations. And the only thing that comes close is the flat Earth or the globe Earth. Both of them are pretty close, but the flat Earth falls apart when you get south of the equator.
So really posit the AE mapping model that Jaron's calling a flat Earth is a spherical projection from a globe.
No way of being correct anymore. And again, if we went down there and saw the sunset and we saw that the south was not working as it's described, then the go-to model would be the flat Earth. And that would be what I would.
So now he's confirming the consequence fallacy and stating that he knew that the sun was going to set, therefore Earth is a globe. No, you have to understand that what you saw was that on a flat plane, when you go to that section of the flat plane, you will see the sun circle above you there. When you go back to another spot on the plane, you'll then find that the sun circles above you there. And then you can then mark out an X on the ground directly 90 degrees below that spot. And you have now located the flat Earth poles.
Would expect to see there.
No, but hang on. One more thing. But Jaron wants you to believe that you're completely upside down from the other flat Earth pole. That you can have a world where people are antipodal from one another, where at some point it rains upside down, where planes and buildings are upside down, flying throughout the earth, where what is completely flat, fixed, and stationary is completely curved and spinning. And he's around here calling us the crazy conspiracy theorists, stating that it could never be flat, when all observations, when all experiments, and when all the evidences that we've ever actually scientifically documented prove it, including Einstein saying that there's no experiment that can prove that the earth is even moving. None.
They want you to believe that just 8,000 miles away from your feet is somebody else standing upside down.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Else just leans towards, and again, like you said, all these other 200 proofs, a lot of his proofs are
and posit
true on the
Jaron was asked if you could understand that we live in a non-physical reality. Now he's gone into Eric Dubé's 200 proofs. How much more can Jaron damage control and get away from and skirt and slide step? He is so snaky. And people wonder, why do we have to make these videos? Why is it? It's because no one else is willing to do this, right? And there are others, thankfully, but they're not able to see the way that we have, because we've been literally documenting this for a decade. Jaron and his disinformation.
Globe Earth, right? So the idea of we measure flat below our feet, that's the Globe Earth's claim. or
What?
water finds its levels.
Okay, hold, yeah, this
He's
is
going
again.
to co-opt. He's going to co-opt all these things and say, "Oh no, that's a globe proof."
Let's go slow. Let's slow it down again a little bit more. Let's go through this rant. Can we go a little bit slower? This is the gravy. This is the most important section of the podcast. I'm sure if you pay Jon Le Bon on his Patreon, he's probably got this clipped, right? Or no? So let's hear what he says here again. So, okay, the very idea that the earth is not curved underneath your feet, the fact that it's flat and level and we measure things from what's called sea level, it's not something that proves the globe. So he's literally announcing all the things that destroy the theory that he now says is the only theory.
Yeah, and just saying, "Oh yeah, that's globe proof."
Right, so the idea of we measure flat below our feet, that's the globe Earth's claim. Or water finds its levels. The globe Earth claims that as well. We see too far. The globe Earth claims that. So a lot of the things that I used to think were flat Earth evidence are actually globe. That's what the globe predicts. And it just so happens that we can steal it because the Earth is so big that it looks flat.
So pause it. So now he literally just did the Stephen Alonso. He literally did. You can go back up to like 1.5. He literally just did. You're just going to go there? All right.
Right. But the conventional model also does tell us that our eyes and the composition of our physicality are all twisted up. Like, isn't what we see supposed to be backwards and flipped and then our eyes self-corrected? Like, there's a lot of weird stuff. So, like, even our senses can't necessarily be trusted.
He's trying to get Jaron back on track. I was asking you a question about a different kind of reality, and he just Jaron went bing.
But his reasoning back onto that is now denying our observations. Now we can't trust what we see and sense, right? With his bringing it off of the physical materiality.
Yeah, if we see things upside down, how do we know that we're not actually upside down? Right? Of course.
I don't know, but I did want to ask you this because I don't want to get caught up in like the debate of Flat Earth 101 because I'm really not even the guy to do it. And there's so many hours of content out there. But I guess when it comes to what has happened, do you think that you would be receptive to the conclusions if you weren't physically there? Or would you be acting like a lot of the other people are acting towards you?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I would like to believe that I wouldn't be acting like them, but I also recognize that I might. The only difference is that if anybody else did what we did, the amount of cameras, the amount of footage, for instance, I went live the 11th from Punta Arenas, the 12th from Punta Arenas.
Just look
13th,
at the transcript.
from
We can
Antarctica,
start
15,
to
16,
scroll
17.
through.
So
that was the
every day
best
that I was
part
down there, I
right
went
there.
The next section's good too. Well, let's get through the future of flat Earth beliefs.
live. That's pretty hard to, we can't fake that. I actually said the scores of football games that were on Thursday night when we got there to prove that it was there when we said. We interacted with the chat, proving that it was live. So I would like to think that if it was other people that went there, that I would certainly not just dismiss it outright and not go by the things that they went by. I mean, they were saying things like, oh, there's no footprints in the snow, but there's no snow there. They were very confused about that.
So stupid.
You couldn't see our breath, so people said it was in a studio, but then you can just look up one time on Google, why don't I see my breath in Antarctica? Well, it's because it's got a humidity of 0.01%. It's completely dry. It's a desert. And so people are, I think, confused about what Antarctica actually is. They would show images of a mountain and say, look, the mountain hasn't changed in 3 years. Well, that's true because the mountain, it doesn't snow there. So people don't realize that. They think it snows all the time in Antarctica. It doesn't. It just never gets above 32 degrees. So it never melts. It just keeps accumulating ice.
I think it snowed there when they were leaving.
I don't think that, well, I know that flat Earth will never be correct just based off the people involved, really. Back when you go back to Rob Skiba being there, and Bob.
Based off of the people involved.
He's the people.
Yeah, Rob Skiba, that's a bad example right there.
Yeah, I explained to Rob Skiba how the AE mapping model didn't work and how it was anti-biblical, and the fact that he was trying to turn the Moses encampment, which was clearly a rectangle, clearly measured out of the Bible, he was turning it into a circus tent.
Mm-hmm. So this section coming up, the future of flat Earth beliefs.
Nodell from Globebusters. A lot of these guys were into the research, the science end of it. Today, we don't have people like that anymore. There's just people who do live streams. There's people who make fun of Globers who basically it's like a big echo chamber. They never provide anything. And there's even people that have started branching off into people who think the Earth is rising up. And I just see it as a huge distraction and something that will never come to fruition. There'll never be a day where we wake up and the Earth be flat. It just will never happen. Because again, the sunrise sunset times,
every day you wake up,
went to December 21st, let's say, that's when the South would be having its 24-hour sun. So if you put your marker on a globe at the South Pole, it would be 24 hours of daylight. As you move it up to the North Pole, it just reduces in perfect unison. 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, all the way to you get to 0. And then when it's June 21st, it's the opposite. It starts at 24 hours at the North Pole, and you drag that bar down, and it's the daylight hours go perfectly down to 0 at the South Pole. So
we've been showing that on a plane for the last 8 years.
that's because the Earth is symmetrical, right? It's the same in the north as it is the south. Just 6 months later, everything's flipped. We have a North Pole sun that if you stood at the North Pole, it goes around from your left hand to your right hand, right? No matter which direction you're looking, if you're at the North Pole, the sun goes left to right. At the South Pole, same thing. The sun goes the opposite direction, right to left. That right there cannot happen on a flat Earth because the sun would have to change directions in the sky. How does it go right for these people? And then all of a sudden, it's the southern summer, so now I'm going to
We have the models that show it to 100th of a degree per second. So this did not have what I was thinking it has. Trying to see if there's anything else.
Yeah, so basically, Jaren's again taking observations, and while Jason's searching for the information, now they're talking about the characters involved, how Lisbeth is in Clubhouse and she didn't have a podcast, Witsit's taking a break and all that other stuff. And so basically, Jaren knew that the way that the Earth worked from sea level, all the measurements we take are from a baseline where the Earth is flat, right? Sea level only works. It's not sea curvel, right? It's not level curving. That's ridiculous. And he misinforms people and tells them there's only 1 inch of curvature in a mile when it's obviously not true. It falls really short. He's totally disinforming people with an agenda here, what we're clearly showing. And so you're still scrolling through. What he should be doing is understanding that these inconsistencies with the spherical model, they have explainable versions with a flat plane. You understand, oh, there's 2 poles, then there must be 2 poles on a flat plane. And how do you get that? Well, that's called a stereographic map. That's what we've been showing for the last decade almost. And what we end up finding is that we're in a virtual reality and things can only be accurate around each observer. So the type of projection that we use can only be accurate around that observer. And that's also the way that we explain things through different types of mapping systems. You've gone on to Robot Polisher, but did you skip the part where he asked Jaren what he's going to be doing moving forward? Oh, this is probably after this section.
Yeah, so Robot Polisher and the Higherside Chats guy went to kindergarten together, and Robot Polisher is a huge shill. I mean, like when those videos started coming out, they're not flat Earth videos. They're anti-flat Earth.
We covered it. You can check Jason's channel here on Wake Souls. Search Robot Polisher and you'll find it. But you should be coming up to the where Jaren's going to be going in the future here. That's the key that we want to probably end on. It's very important for people to understand that. But again, if Jaren was a truther, if he was actually looking for the truth, he would have realized that what we did. We realized very quickly that the AE Mappa model was wrong. We even showed him. We explained it to him in detail. But then you can still understand that the Earth is still fixed and flat, and then you find a way that you can have 2 poles. You have to understand the whole entire paradigm shift of reality has to take place. And
this must be it.
They make fun of us and they mock us, Jason and I, because we actually shifted our worldview away from atomistic Big Bang evolution theory.
Continue to do this, and I do enjoy it. I just don't want to keep you too long, but I want to make sure we save time here. You know, the way the show is cut, I put the end on both versions of the show, and I think it's important to ask you how you plan to move forward. I know myself, having put all my eggs in this conspiracy podcasting basket, it would be super hard to make any sort of radical pivot if the audience I cultivated was not on board. You have a family. That makes it even more difficult. Do you plan to continue on as a streamer or conspiracy content creator in the space going forward? Or what? I mean, because once you start making your money this way, or you start, you know, you've put a lot of energy into this, you're not going to throw it away. How are you going to pivot?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of already done that. And I guess and I don't want to try and put myself on a pedestal, but I do think that I put truth before everything else. And that's been known about me forever because I've gone anti-Christian before. Whereas if you're a flat earther, that's your audience.
So he literally was asked, where are you headed with your content? And the first thing that Jaren says is, I'm anti-Christian.
Because I've gone anti-Christian
before. And literally.
Whereas if you're a flat earther, that's your audience. It's Christians.
See, there it is. pattern recognition rearing its beautiful truth. Beautiful to us, painful to Todd Le Bon and to Craig from Higherside Chats. The three of them who are openly anti-Christian, who hate the Bible, who are now ex-flat earthers. Well, John was just a skeptic, right? Baller skeptic, right? There's the crux.
Make their living being content creators, catering to the anti-Christian perspective.
That's right. And they went flat earth for a while, that crew. And Greg here facilitated a lot of that through entertaining it and radicalizing people into the notion that we weren't living on a spinning sphere. And now Jaron has come in with the narrative of the overstanding position. And Greg is like, thank you. You know, I'm so appreciative that you found the truth, because now he can now go back to his anti-Christian, anti-flat earth theories, his dogmatism, the way that these guys operate. They want aliens to be real. They want outer space to be real. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to believe that the creator of this reality sent his son here, and his son literally died, right? Was murdered by the people who are anti-Christian and anti-biblical. And then he rose back to life, right? And he holds the keys to the future of reality. And these people hate that. They
want to
it.
believe that they are gods, right?
That's the big crux of
Christians.
it.
So if I cared about money first, I would definitely be a Christian. I'd be promoting that, but I didn't. So I always had.
Christianity doesn't make you any money, just like flat earth doesn't make you any money. These are two of the most hated topics in the world. Like, you don't get, like, we're not living in a TV evangelist dream where you say that you're a Christian, start talking, and people throw millions of dollars at you.
I mean, private jets, and he's going to Benny Hinn. He's going to be flying all over the world. He's going to have this huge congregation. Like, what kind of a nonsense fantasy world is this guy living in?
This kind of strange relationship. And now it's even more strange. I mean, talk about the biggest loser on YouTube would be me, because I'm really just keep damaging my audience by now. It's like, well, I still don't believe in Mars rovers, and I still don't believe. So then the science crowd's going to come over to me, but they're going to be like, what? This guy doesn't believe in Mars rovers? He's a douchebag. He's a loser. And the flat earthers are going to say, what? This guy's a sphere believer. So I kind of lose everybody, right? Anybody who's a truth, I kind of lose.
Man without a country.
Except for the anti-Christians. You got to cater to the anti-Christians, right, Jaron?
That's his avenue. And tonight he was maybe still live streaming with Dave McKeegan, and they were proving the moon landings now, right? So, you know, what he said he wasn't, because he doesn't have an audience, he's now doing.
Yeah. And I don't want to be a globe pusher or a flat earth debunker. And the reason for that is because it's not my job. Like, I was teaching flat earth because I thought we were being lied to about the shape of the earth. So once I realized we're not, I don't need to now teach the globe. That's school's job. That's not my job. So I guess by being honest, I hope that there's something that pops out. And if there's not, then I'm gonna have to shut it down and, go back to, working. Do I want to do that? No. At the same time, the alternative to that really meant to me that I would have to come back and pretend that I believe in the flat earth, or pretend that I think it has a viable path going forward. And I don't. There's no way that we could see the observations that we see and the earth be flat. It just doesn't work unless the God of this world is a deceiver and wanted us to think a certain way, and so made the world look like a sphere, but it's not. And then in that case,
we've been saying for the last 8 years that we're in a virtual reality that's designed in a way that the New World Order, the Vatican, would be able to come up with first the geocentrism lie, then the heliocentrism lie, so that they could go to the evolution and Big Bang, so that everybody could become atheists and believe that they came from nothing and that there is no creator.
Oh, no.
So
the actually spin-off of that is that you're God. The same lie that Azazel told them in the garden, that you are to be God.
Yeah. So the Bible strongly talks about a grand delusion, and that many people will be misled, and that the whole purpose of this is finding the people that are willing to fight for the truth, that have enough common sense and enough integrity to be able to search out truth and stand for it. And being in a virtual reality, this is a period of test. There was a fall, there's a test, and then there's going to be Christ's millennial reign.
Peace.
So that's going to be the group that passes the test.
Yes,
and
no more liars and deceivers. They're going to be gone.
Absolutely. you want to keep going through this, or
I think we got through the best parts, the most important things to document. Well, just play a little bit more. Let's see this.
Okay.
One more little bit.
Case, I don't really know if I can care about that. So he's deceiving us on purpose. Well, then you're going to, if you fall for the deception, oh, well, it's not really a deception. If the earth
was there a cut there? It sounded like it.
Oh,
maps
yeah.
as a sphere, then it should be a sphere. So again, could it be a paradox earth, like you said, or some sort of a metaphysical thing? I guess so. But then why make it answerable by a sphere? There's just nothing that the sphere doesn't answer. There's no observation that we have that we're like, oh, the sphere doesn't answer that.
I suppose so. Well, I mean,
So-
there are no shortage of deceptions in this world on a true
Pause it.
truth-seeking.
So yeah, that's the end of it. The most important thing to take away here is many other people in the scientific world, like George Smoot and other people who theorize the fact that proof of virtual reality is that you can't definitively prove what it is. If it was a sphere Earth, there would not be a debate. If it was an AEMAT pressurized pizza dome Earth, there would not be a debate. Okay. And ultimately, these two are working together, and Todd or Jon Le Bon is also working again with them to further the agenda. And for whatever reason, maybe they're just here to test the inhabitants of this place. They are just NPCs. There's a very good chance. And then we don't have to feel bad for them if they get destroyed, right?
That'd be a best case scenario for them.
And don't be fooled by them. Continue to follow the truth and understand that the earth is fixed and flat and the luminaries rotate around us, right? They're spherical. Enoch says that the heavens are actually spherical, but the earth is a fixed plane. He literally describes that the sun rises in the east and the sun sets in the west. And we filmed it, and we've got clouds in front of, behind, we've got shadows that are coming from below the horizon up into the sky. The sun shadow is being cast onto the bottom side of the clouds. This is impossible in a heliocentric model. The fact that the earth is supposedly tilted, and on the equinox twice a year, you have a due east rise and a due west set. This is impossible in a physical reality. The heliocentric model says that it's tilted and it falls flat on its face and can't be proven in a court of law. And we can argue this over and over again, and there is nobody that's willing to argue it with us.
But we'll keep, when they put out this type of content, we'll just keep pointing to it and say, see, I mean, look, you want to go with the Gerans, the Higherside Chats, the Todd Le Bons, go your anti-Christian space religion if you want to. I mean, it's completely up to you, but I mean, it's not reality. You're not flying around in an infinite space vacuum, everybody.
And you're going to
come from
stand
nothing.
before the judge of this reality. And when he asks you why you denied his truth, you're going to stand in the face of it, and you're going to have to answer for it. Okay. So make the right decision and follow the truth.
Let people know what content is coming up soon, brother.
So we're going to have the Rise and Grind on Sunday. Make sure you're tuned in. In the description box is a link to my channel over there. It's the Limitless channel. I go and I do, 9 new songs, and we cover the headlines and stuff like that. You're not going to want to miss that. That's going to be Sunday morning at 9 or 9:30 Central. That's 10:30 Eastern. Make sure you're there. Tune in for that. And in the upcoming, not maybe this week, but next week, we are going to read some more extra-canonical books. We're going to talk about the view of the crucifixion from Pontius Pilate's perspective, a book that was also taken out of the canon. And it's going to be great. You're going to start to see some of the deception. So we were talking today about how you don't make money. So there's a whole community of deceivers in the Christian community, just like there is in the flat earth community. A bunch of people that were LARPs, they're fakers, they're employed by whatever secret society. And they want you to think that you're going to just get raptured off the face of the earth and not have to go through anything. Well, we're going to show you exactly. And they also tell you that Christ is God, right? That he came here and died for your sins, and they go and fly right in the face of the truth of the Bible. We're going to show you that the Pontius Pilate story actually completely contradicts that and shows the truth that he was the son of the living creator. I'm looking forward to that book as well, Jay. Maybe we'll do more on that week too. We're going to find out. There's so much to get into, so many extra canonical books. But
the real Passover coming up in not too long. That's May 11th at sundown. So
we'll be doing something then too, for sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned. Make sure you're tuned in here. Thanks, Jason. Thank you for YD. Thank you for the Goldsmith, everybody that helps out with the podcasts. Thanks to Todd, Jon Le Bon. Thanks to Greg from the Higherside Chats. Thanks to Jaron for at least you guys were actually who you are and who you're meant to be and doing what you want to do. I'll give you the credit for that. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to end up so well for you. You're only going to hear this content on the Yahawashai News Networks.
It's the end of the world, but we already know. Can I love any longer if you let me go? Why are so many souls willing to be sown? There's a whole lot of talking with nothing to show. So get up, listen with your now. Go and let it all out. We don't have to fake it, love until you make it. Get up, listen with your now. Go and let it all out. We don't have to fake it, love until you make it. 'Cause you got